Hey, Mr. P helps with Precal. This is Unit 4, Topic 2, Lesson number 2. So we are going to be eliminating one of the parameters in parametric equations. We're going to start off with just some literal equations, something you learned back in Algebra 1. So I'm going to solve for the variable of t, which means I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, which gives me x minus 3 equals negative 2t. Always keep the sign that comes before the coefficient in this case. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. And that's going to give me my answer. So t equals x minus 3 divided by negative 2. Over here, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. Keep in mind, whenever you're solving equations, you're always basically doing PEMDAS backwards. So you always have to do things in this order, but you're doing opposite operations in the opposite order when you're solving the equations. So therefore, you're looking for add and subtract first, then multiply and divide, and then exponents, and then parentheses. So got to get rid of add or subtract before you can get rid of the exponents. So that's going to give me x minus 4 equals t squared, and the inverse of squaring something would be square root. So therefore, t is equal to both positive and negative square root of x minus 4, whatever that ends up being. All right, so parametric equations, as we've talked about before, x represents the horizontal distance, and y represents the vertical distance. So in projectile motion, we're talking about x equals is how far the object goes, and y would be how high the object is at that particular time. And of course, we relate everything to t, which was time. When looking at most equations, we're relating x in terms of y. And the reason why we're doing that is because whenever you write equations, usually like y equals mx plus b. It's usually y equals. So you're relating x in terms of y is something. So how can I change the parametric equations to a single equation in terms of x and y? So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take the x parameter and I'm going to solve just the x parameter for t. And then I can take whatever I'm given at that moment and I can plug it into, using substitution method like system of equations, plug it into the y equation and substituting in for t and then solving it. And then you're going to end up with one equation where you have x and y, both parameters in one equation. So you've eliminated literally one of the parameters and you have it down to just one equation. All right. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for t. So x equals 1 minus 2t, so I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. X minus 1 equals negative 2t. Keep in mind, this looks like this is the exact same equation I just did in the warm-up. So therefore, t equals x minus 1 over negative 2. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to substitute it right there, which means that y equals 2 minus parentheses x minus 1 divided by negative 2. All right, so because if t equals this, then this t would also equal that exact same thing. And then you have yourself your equation. All right, so now that I've got this equation written in y equals, now I do want to change this to rectangular form, which means I'm going to put it just in terms of x and y, and I want to get rid of this division. So in order to do that, I'm going to divide everything here by negative 2. If I multiply this by negative 2, this, and this, then it's going to stay the same thing. So that's negative 2y equals negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. And then it's going to be minus x minus 1, like that. Of course, then that negative then gets distributed. So you have negative 2y equals negative 4 minus x plus 1. And then, of course, these two constants then can be combined together. So you're left with negative 2y equals negative x minus 3 would be simplest form. Or divide both sides by negative 1, of course. So then it would just be 2y equals x plus 3. Okay, so eliminate the parameter. X equals t squared minus 2. So once again, I'm going to take the x parameter and I'm going to solve for t. And that's going to be add 2 to both sides. So I'm left with x plus 2 equals t squared. And then square root of both sides so that t is equal to square root of x plus 2. Now I can take this and I can then substitute it in right there so that y equals 3 times the square root of x plus 2, which technically I really don't even need those parentheses, just 3 times the square root of x plus 2. And that will be it. Of course, though, we have our square root, which means it's going to be both positive and negative. So y is technically positive and negative 3 times the square root of x plus 2. All right, so same steps for this next one. Solve for t. That's going to give me x plus 1 when I add the 1 to both sides equals 2 times t squared. So then I would divide by 2, and then that's going to give me t squared equals x plus 1 over 2. And then square root both sides so that t is equal to positive and negative square root of x plus 1 over 2. All right, so then take this, plug it in right there, and I've got y equals positive or negative square root of x plus 1 over 2. Multiply both sides by 2. I scratched that last phrase. I forgot that the 2 is being protected by the square root, so therefore we can't multiply both sides by 2. That would only be if it was square root on top. So this is actually your answer right there. Same thing goes for this one, so I'm going to move the 2 to the other side, subtract 2, so we have x minus 2 equals negative 3t, divide by negative 3 like so. So that t is equal to x minus 2 over negative 3. Take this, substitute it right there. So then we have y equals 5 plus x minus 2 over negative 3. I'm going to then multiply everything by negative 3. And that's going to give me this, x plus 2. These two can be simplified. So there's my answer, negative 3y equals negative, well, let me just put the x first. And then negative 15 plus 2 makes negative 13. There's your answer. All right, a couple more examples. What if you were looking at it in component form? Okay, so this is actually slightly different. So what you notice here is that this is basically the x and this is the y in component form. Well, that just means that that's the same thing as x equals 2t and y equals t squared minus 1. Now, everything else is done just the same. If I was going to solve for t, that would be t equals x divided by 2, because I'm dividing both sides by 2. And then I'm going to take this, plug it in right there, so that y equals x plus 2 squared minus 1. All right, so then this can change into y equals x squared over 4 minus 1. And then I will multiply everything by 4, and that's going to give me 4y equals x squared minus 4. And there you go. Rectangular form. Eliminate the parameter and write the rectangular equation in terms of x and y. Okay, so this is going to be x equals square root of t and y equals t plus 7. So if I'm solving for t, I would just simply square both sides. So t equals x squared, and then I can take x squared, plug it in right there. Y equals x squared plus 7, and that's a pretty easy question. That's done. Over here, we've got x equals t minus 3 and y equals 5t squared minus t. All right, so I'm going to solve this first equation for t. I'm going to add 3 to both sides so that t equals x plus 3, and I'm going to put that in there. So y equals, okay, it looks like this is going to be quadratic. This might take a little bit more time. So y equals 5 times x plus 3 squared minus x plus 3. Okay, so squaring this first, and then I'll worry about the distributing the 5. Squaring x plus 3 is going to be y equals 5 times x squared. Remember, multiply by itself is 9, and then these two terms by each other and double it, because FOIL, outers and inners, are going to be the exact same thing. 3x doubled makes 6x plus 9. And then minus x plus 3. Next thing I'm going to do is multiply that 5, so distribute. 5x squared plus 30x plus 45 minus x minus 3. Remember, I distribute the minus to both. And then just clean this up a little bit by combining like terms, 30x and minus x. 5x squared plus 29x, and then the 45 minus 3 makes 42. And there you have it. That would be your equation. And I think that's where I'm going to end it right there. I'm not going to do that extra ticket just in case. Thanks again for watching, and have a wonderful day.